Hey everyone, it's Horror Free for All, and I hope you're doing well today. I'm finally ready to bring you my Monsters Season 3 ranking video. Now, this has taken me a long time to finish this franchise, but after binging two really long ones in a row, not too long ago in recent past, I needed a mini break with Monsters, even though I started it, I think, last year, or maybe even the year before that. And it's taken me a long time to finally get around to finishing this show. And I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of glad that I finished it when I did, after experiencing a lot more in anthology horror on like the casual side, watching episodes here and there, shows I never heard about, because I think it's opened my eyes to how great this show really was. And I took for granted its greatness, especially when I was watching season one. I thought this show was just a soft continuation of Darkseid, which it most of the time is. But then once I got to season two, I realized that was like one of the best anthology seasons I've ever seen for me personally, in terms of like consistency and just endless rewatchability. A lot of the episodes from that run of stories there, I find myself wanting to come back to. And season three is bittersweet to me because it kind of continues what they were doing in season two, with some drop offs and some slips more so than there. But for this being the final Laurel Productions horror anthology season they ever made, if you don't know who I'm referring to, when I say Laurel Productions, I'm referring to the team that was led by George Romero when he started his quest to want to make Creepshow into television, and that spawned Tales from the Dark Side and the failed spinoff Night Rose, and then of course Monsters. And it also resulted in Creepshow getting a sequel, and Dino De Laurentiis being involved in some aspects, getting more Stephen King properties, and it also spawned Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, as well. But nonetheless, I think Monsters season three, um, it's not the best season, but I think it's the second best. And I know season one has a lot of fan favorite episodes in it, and I might be spewing a hot take here, but yeah, season three is very close to season two and almost a full step above season one for me. I think by this point, they knew what the show was. They had more new writers come in with newer ideas and different ways to convey stories that I thought was very interesting. This was probably the most envelope pushing season that I've ever seen this production company go down in all 7 notable seasons worth of content they produced. But nonetheless, we have a lot of episodes to go over with Monster Season 3. And if you're curious to hear what my favorite episodes of this show were, right after this, I'm going to be making my top 10 Monsters episode video for you all. So, we have 24 episodes to discuss, rounding out the final episode stretch of episode 49 through 72. Each Monster season is 24 episodes, and if you've been keeping up with my ranking videos, they've been long because there's a lot of stuff to go over. So, if you're new to these rankings, I do have a rating system, and I have differing categories that range in 3 major categories. You get to that danger level where you have bad and genuinely awful being the bottom. And then you have the mid, where you have meh, okay, and decent kind of populating. And then you have horror FFA approved, which is good, very good, great, and the elusive perfect. And spoiler alert, every category got an entry -2 here, and those are the polar ends of genuinely awful and perfect, which shows you that this season was kind of all over the place sometimes, specifically in the, I would say, episode 60 to 66 range. That was kind of rough. But once you get past that stretch of episodes and you get to like the back half, you're going to see in the ranking here, they did improve here. Now, to start off, because we have a lot to go over, I need to get into it. The bottom 3 of this season, the 2 bad and 1 meh episode, are all episodes written by the same writer who wrote my favorite Tales from the Dark Side episode. Edith Swenson. I did not expect Edith Swenson to have a bunch of just infuriating episodes for me this late in the game, but here we are. So at number 4, we have our first bad entry. Now, granted, number 24 and number 23 got the same score, so these are super interchangeable, but I think that both of these episodes just flat out suck. We have episode 62, Household Gods, of course, written by Edith Swenson. I gave this a 1.5 out of 5 stars. This story was just goofy. It's about a career woman. She has a newborn baby, and she's trying to balance maternity leave and going back to work and all of that. But since she's had a baby, things seem to go awry in her house, so to speak. And it's causing her to lose sleep and lose focus on, tasks at hand and keeping up with her job and all of that. And as we learn in the story, there's perhaps a benevolent or malevolent, it's kind of vague of what their exact motives are, popping in and out of, I guess, appliances in the house to cause havoc, to mess with this woman and cause the baby to scream to make her lose sleep, because there's some sort of manipulation trying to make her essentially become a housewife and give in to, traditional gender expectations, I guess. So yeah, this one is just, it's kind of, it's not badly acted, I would say. And I don't mind the idea, but it's all comes down to the execution, the monster design, the annoying sound effects, the music, the mildly seizure-inducing light effects in the episode, and the weird direction choices they go with the monster. I feel like this is trying to say something, but what it's trying to say, I think it's jumbled. And I don't really feel like the message that it's saying makes much freaking sense whatsoever. It is what it is. I just think it's bad. I have nothing else to say, and that's where I'm going to leave it. All right, tied with that basically at number 23, we have episode 66, Desirable Alien, also written by Edith Swenson, at a 1.5 out of 5 stars. This episode was super fucking weird, and it almost landed at the bottom, but this one actually made me chuckle a few times, so I decided to give it a little bit of a leg up to Household Gods here. But Desirable Alien's about this immigrant worker who is tasked with this Greek immigrant who owns a business, but apparently he's like good with the ladies, and she gets swooned over him, and it's revealed that he might be related to a Greek mythical being that has the power to swoon human women, and it gets hokey very quick with that and almost softcore porn-like. And yeah, by the end, I was cringing eternally with the twist of this worker in this Greek mythical being, and what they decide to do with their characters is so corny. I was just mentally checked out. Yeah, this is one of the few times that, sadly, I've seen this done even back in Tales from the Dark Side with the people behind this show and that show. They try to do like parodies or, I don't know, like flanderized humor stories. And I don't know, maybe CBS was forcing them to contractually obligate themselves to put episodes like that in the show, or maybe they genuinely wanted to make crap like this, but this shit was just fucking weird. The characters weren't that engaging. This has the typical monsters problem I see going on in a lot of these episodes compared to Dark Side, and that the pace is just, and you don't feel anything about these characters, and they try to build up a romantic ship with them, and it's just fucking bizarre. Yeah, not vibing it. It wasn't scary. It wasn't horror. I don't know what the fuck they were trying to do here. I guess they were trying to go for the whole, oh, he's a monster, right? But where I say that I laughed my ass off at the most was the initial reveal when she realizes that this guy is a Greek being, and let's just say how he behaves towards her was kind of funny. But other than that, this episode's fucking bad. So yeah, you can skip both of these bottom two. They suck. All right, at number 22, we have the first meh episode, and this is the final of the Edith Swenson goose eggs here from the season. We have episode 60, A New Woman, and I gave this episode a 2.25 out of 5 stars, which is a bit of a step up from these other two we've already talked about. Now, this one is essentially a play on A Christmas Carol, and you have a Tales from the Crypt typecast character in here with a gold digger looking to get an inheritance off this older lover of hers. And while he's in the hospital, he has an issue going on where his doctor gets involved, and his doctor has a way of words with this woman. And as she drifts off to sleep, she has like this dreamscape, I don't know how to explain it. She has this dreamscape type scenario playing out for the remainder of the story, where she gets visited by the figurative ghost of Christmas past, right? But it's actually her zombified, corpse-looking old hubby that is basically telling her that because she is the way she is, she's now going to have to suffer along with him. And it kind of makes her learn to be good and see the error of her ways and whatnot. It's super corny and forced. This woman is super unlikable. She's a gold digger, and by the end of it, you don't really feel like what the story is saying at the end with her makes much valid sense, because you don't really feel like this character has grown to really learn anything. She's just been thrown into a scary dream, right? And especially when it's revealed to be a dream, you're like, oh shit, here we go. But yeah, other than that, I thought the Christmas atmosphere was kind of fun here. There is some legit creepy looking body gore and effects here at certain shots of it. Nothing too, spectacular or anything, but yeah, this one was kind of meh. I think it would have been a bit better if they focused the story a little more and maybe just made a character study instead of just trying to play on A Christmas Carol tropes, but I digress. So yeah, that's A New Woman. Now we're entering the okay territory, and we have 2 episodes here as well. And these 2, I really don't know how to feel about them. They're both kind of tied for me at a 2.5 out of 5 stars, so I'll go ahead and share them. We have episode 52, Cellmates. This was written by David Odell, and like I said, it was a 2.5 out of 5 stars. So this one, it has the guy that played the second main character in Grease 2. That's the only thing I know him from. And this man is in, I think, Mexico, and he's been put in jail for hitting somebody with their car and killing him. So while he's awaiting in a Mexican jail, he's essentially threatening the police that, he's a white man, he has money, blah, 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 blah. But this commotion has caught the attention of a cellmate nearby who's like this older gentleman, and people around the prison cell seem to be afraid of this guy. And as I think the actor's name is Maxwell Caulfield, as his character gets to understand this prisoner next door to him, he seems to put together that this phenomenon of this white liquid oozing out of this floor drain might be associated with this guy at some point, after certain plot points are revealed. And of course, that's basically what you're going to expect out of it. And if you watch the episode, there is a plot twist that you're going to see coming from a mile away. That's going to happen near the end, but I digress. Cellmates, bizarre premise, very, tight on the pace. It's actually not that bad pace for what the concept is going for, but it just wasn't intriguing. They don't really do anything impactful with the story. It's just kind of like a comeuppance tale for the sake of it, with some supernatural beats, and everything that you get out of this story, minus maybe the aspect of this white liquid oozing out of the floor, you've seen done before. So yeah, that's why it's here. All right, and number 20, we have episode 61, Malcolm. Like I said, this is tied with this one, essentially. This one was written by Tom Noonan, who actually stars as the main character in one of my favorite episodes from this season, ironically. And I gave this episode also a 2.5 out of 5 stars, like I said. This one by far has to be one of the most bizarre Monsters episodes ever made, in my opinion. This is the one where the gentleman of the story, like the main character, he's like a clarinet player, and he has this illness where there's like this light coming out of his throat or something, or maybe his stomach, and his wife sees this and wants to get him medical attention, and they find that there's a source of the light inside of him, and they think that it can be cancerous or something that might be killing him, so they decide to remove it, and it turns out to be like some sort of alien creature that possibly was giving him all of his musical abilities. And then for the rest of the story, the wife and the husband have to figure out maybe what's the best move for him moving forward. Maybe should he reacquaint himself with this thing or not in his body, you know what I mean? So yeah, this one was just, pushing decent, I think. But the concept as is, there's not a lot to it. It's just very basic, and I guess it's fine for the most part. I just found myself a little bored and kind of caught off guard with, the random plot twists with like the light and stuff. I just think it's a little too weird for my liking. And it doesn't really do anything horrific with the idea. It's kind of played up for mostly like laugh humor and a punchline of the story near the end. But yeah, other than that, okay time to be had, but not the best thing ever. All right, from this point on, we're now entering the decent territory and up. So the decent is on the upper end of mid, like I said. So we got a lot to go through here. At number 19, we have episode 53, Outpost. This was written by Michael Reeves, who wrote some of my favorite episodes from season 1. And it's been a while that I've seen an episode from him, I think. And I was kind of excited to see another one from him. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I thought this one had a fun twist to it all. It was kind of sad. But the story is just a bottle episode with a lot of dialogue and nothing happening. And if that's your speed, I get it. But yeah, not for me. So the premise is this woman who's tasked with like a collection agency has come to this bunker on this poisonous gas planet where they've sent like these hybridized cyborg human creatures to essentially be slaves and work the terrain and gather up, supplies and stuff to make this company money. And she's arrived at this depot to essentially tell the main slave, and I think he's the only one there on the planet who's gathering all this stuff. She's essentially there to tell him that he needs to get in line or they're going to execute him because he's defying orders. And he goes down this whole explanation with her throughout the story of why he's doing what he's doing and how he feels about his existence and all of that. And it makes the woman kind of play on, maybe some regrets she's had in life and that perhaps involves a former lover. And there's a massive recontextualization near the end of the story where the being is said that he'd rather leave the depot and go on the planet forever or go to this green light that's calling him. And it may or may not involve some connection of a person that the woman knew, earlier in her life. So, yeah, minus the plot twist, this one would have scored way lower. It's just really boring. The monster effects look decent for this cyborg creature, but other than that, it's just decent. You know what I mean? At number 18 now, we have episode 55, Small Blessing. This was an episode written by Peg Holler and Bob Schneider. The episodes they wrote in this show, good God almighty. I give this a 3 out of 5 stars. I think Kevin Nealon and David Spade are in this episode from memory, two SNL alum, and they're quite funny. And I think the premise of this episode is just batshit. So a couple has a baby who might be like a sentient monster that goes around and like, tears up shit and all that crap. So there's like this boy next door that wants to take advantage of the couple by babysitting for the baby and whatnot, and kind of wants to rob them and do something awful to them. but he doesn't know about the baby that's in the story. And yeah, it's about as what you expect, right? It's just really dumb for the sake of being it, but it is entertaining. I think it's one of these episodes that try way too hard to have this certain vibe going. I've noticed this in Monsters and Tales from the Dark Side, where they try to push for a certain tone, and sometimes that just kind of takes away from all the horror. Sadly, here, that's what it feels like. It feels kind of like a very tongue-in-cheek Charles Band movie, but done in like 20 minutes. So, yeah, possibly would have been done better there, but yeah, nonetheless, this was a decent time, I would say. Now, number 17, we actually have the first episode of the season, episode 49, Stressed Environment. This was written by Neil Stevens, and I gave this a 3.25 out of 5 stars. This one was kind of fun. It was about this lab researcher who's been doing stress tests and pain tests on these lab mice to see if putting them in certain situations will raise their intelligence level, and the intelligence will spread to their offspring and whatnot. And it turns out in the story, as these characters get involved with these lab rats more and more, they start to learn that they possibly have started to fabricate their own weapons, and might be sentient and communicating with each other, and they might be going on a killing spree and whatnot. And that's basically all this episode really is. There is some subtext about playing God here, but there's not a lot to it. You get that, irony message of reap what you sow, right? They've been putting all this effort to raise the intelligence of rats, and because rats out-multiply humans, even though they're small, they're dangerous and all that. And there is some fun little schlocky slasher elements with like the creature feature vibe going on here that make it a little more worthwhile than other things that I've seen kind of like it. But yeah, other than that, this one is just kind of by the book. Everything that you would expect out of it, you get it. And can't say that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it just didn't wow me or anything. And also, the claymation here with the rats, or the effects they use for the rats, I should say, in my opinion, was not that good. So take that for what you will. So, yeah. At number 16 now, we have episode 50, Murray's Monster. This was written by Scott Alexander, and I also gave this a 3.25 out of 5 stars. Yeah. This one was just... I really don't know what else to say. This kind of feels like a black comedy version of a story that already existed in Creepshow called The Crate. This story is called Murray's Monster because there's a patient of this psychologist named Murray who claims to him that whenever he gets like up in a fit of emotion or rage, he turns into this monster. And the psychiatrist thinks on this as possibly a plan to get rid of his wife, who he wants to get rid of because he's having an affair with this much younger secretary of his. If it sounds familiar, it kind of resembles The Crate, right? So, of course, the psychiatrist tries to come up with a plan to get Murray to, take care of his wife. But because this is a Monsters episode and they like to be cheesy, there's a twist involving Murray and possibly him having a crush on the man's wife, and hardy har, the psychiatrist gets what's coming to him. Yeah, this one was a decent time. It's a little too tongue-in-cheek for my taste. And sometimes tongue-in-cheek and Monsters can work. This one, you've seen these plot beats done already with The Crate, and it doesn't really do anything new minus the added twist at the end that they try to invert, which I thought was clever enough to put it where I put it here. But yeah, other than that, this one's kind of a slog, and the main character, he's overly sleazy, but the actor is good. The actor was good. I think he plays the guy from Happy Gilmore that says, "You suck, you jackass." So that was fun to see him in something else. But other than that, yeah, Murray's Monster. Now, at number 15, we have episode 56, Shaving a Haircut 2 Bites. This one was written by Dan Simmons, and I also gave this a 3.25 out of 5 stars. This one was a super weird take on vampires. It's about these two teenage kids who are nearby this barber shop that is run by these two older gentlemen, but one of the boys seems to think that vampires are running this barber shop, and he goes down this whole conspiracy with this his friend, who's actually played by a young Matt LeBlanc from Friends, and he's telling him that the symbol of the barber shop goes back, centuries to when vampires first came about, and all of this. I don't want to get into too many spoilers there about it, but the gist is essentially that they want to uncover evidence that they are actually vampires, and they want to take care of them, right? But when the two kids go inside the barbershop, they learn the hard way what's actually going on in there. And let's just say there's a lot of things you would not expect whatsoever. Like, this is not your average vampire tale whatsoever. And for that, I weirdly love it. In some aspects, I put it at a high decent for a reason, though. I feel like there's just not a lot to this one. You have a similar setup to Fright Night, which was a film by Tom Holland in the mid-1980s. And I like that aspect to it. But there's a little just too much playing on the idea of them kind of spying on the vampires more so than just throwing you into the action. I think if this episode just immediately threw them into the scenario and they got to play around with these older gentlemen who I thought stole the show from the younger kids, surprisingly, this would have been a bit higher for me, and I probably would have put it as a full-on good or possibly higher than that. But yeah, this one I did really enjoy, and yeah, that's all I have to say. Now, at number 14, we have episode 57, The Young and the Headless. This was written by W.G. Morrow, and I also gave this a 3.25 out of 5 stars as well. For a parody feeling story, this is obviously, you look at the title, it's a play on The Young and the Restless. There's like a soap opera element here. But I thought this one was kind of crazy in the good way. There is a woman and her husband who live, drama-free life, but one day a blast from the past comes into the home to, ignite some tension in the marriage, because this man who was thought to be dead for a long time because he was out, I think, in the Vietnam War, but they never found his body, but he just randomly turns up, comes back into the forefront and wants his former wife back, or former girlfriend, I think. And the wife is kind of torn because, she's married to this guy now, but she also loved her ex. And this makes things just hella weird for the current husband. But the current husband is a scientist doing research on decapitation and possibly having creatures live on without a head, let's just say. And we see something with birds and what that entails in the story as well. But the husband gets an idea of a plan to possibly take care of this gentleman, and there's a whole thing to possibly get him to self-harm, let's just say, which is really out there, and it may or may not backfire, and the wife possibly gets the last laugh on both of them. This honestly, I think, would work in Tales from the Crypt, and the only reason why I put it this low is because this episode just doesn't have the budget nor the clever writing to execute it in a Tales from the Crypt way. If you had, maybe, Gilbert Adler or A.L. Katz given the script on this, maybe give it to Robert Zemeckis, they would have crushed this in Tales from the Crypt. No offense to W.G. Morrow, I think he did a fantastic job at kind of giving the blueprint here. But, yeah, what they had going on here wasn't up to snuff. But I will say, there are some shocking moments in this story, like involving self-harm, that I was not expecting whatsoever. So yeah, it goes there. So take that for what you will. And to round out the decents, at number 13, we have episode 59, Sin Sop. This was a story by Alan Bogus. And I also gave this a 3.25 out of 5 stars. This one is bizarre as hell too. This is a weirdly bizarre one. But this story is about this guy who runs a hotel. He basically invites skeptics and, and reporters doing tabloids and stuff to his place of business to check out this sin-eating machine that is said and advertised by this man to, rid you of all the evil inside of you, and it makes you feel so much better afterwards. And this skeptic reporter comes in to kind of do an expose, and she's already made up her mind that this guy's a fraud. And when she's taken to this room and shown by this man what this contraption is, she's already like going on a tirade about how she feels about this guy. But the machine is essentially this dead corpse of a man who committed a shit ton of sin. And it's hooked up to all these wires and stuff. And when it's turned on, it animates the guy's body. And if the person touches the body, there's these tubes that lead over to a tub that soak up all the sin through the corpse and spit it out into the tub. So I guess by hand-to-hand contact, the corpse eats the sin out of you or whatnot. And there's a scene, and I shit you not, this is probably like a few minutes long, of this woman holding this corpse and feeling this vibration. And it sounds like she's having a full-on you-know-what for minutes. It is so freaking weird. And then she's convinced that this is true, right? But, plot twist, there's a gentleman that comes in the story that wants his own way with this contraption. And let's just say he has what's coming to him, and he may become part of the contraption by the end of it. This one was just... not a lot happens in it, but what sticks out is the concept of it. And I think that from what they were going for about it eating sin and all that, it stuck with the lane and it didn't venture from that. And the acting performances here were not too shabby whatsoever. It's a very, very, very small budget story. As you can tell, sometimes Laurel Productions, they literally made one set episodes, and that's where they filmed the whole thing. This is kind of like that. But nonetheless, kind of creative, and I wish it was just a little bit better to put it higher, but this is where I have it. Now we're entering the top 12, the top half. So at number 12, we have episode 69, Talk Nice to Me. This was written by Paul Dini, who you might know from Batman Adventures or Batman the Animated Series. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. This is the lowest good I have from this season. It's a story about a guy who is a womanizer, and he's being stalked by this phone caller, kind of, pestering him, asking him, to, speak with her or whatnot. And at first he's vibing with it, but she gets kind of clingy, and he's not liking it, and he's not being reciprocative anymore. But the caller keeps calling and says, look, I need you to be nice to me, blah, 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 blah. And he thinks that he's figured out who this potential stalker might be. And he lures who he thinks it is into his home one night to take care of it. But there's a massive plot twist about who's been on the other end of the phone, let's just say. And it's not what you're expecting. This one was kind of good. I like the tension of the story. I felt the stakes kind of build up for this guy. You can see that he goes from being uncomfortable with the stalker to outright being angry, and then getting kind of desperate to end it all. And I don't know, it was just really believable. The only thing that holds it back is the twist. The twist, in my opinion, is not good. But for what it is for this show, it fits, I guess. So yeah, this is a low good episode. Nothing else to say about it. Now, number 11, we have one of the final episodes of the whole show. And this one kind of surprised me. It's episode 71, The Maker. This was written by Michael Kimball. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars as well. So this one, I think, was a massive allegory on alcoholism. And I like stories like this that have like rich subtext going on. But it just didn't do what I wanted it to do. But it's about this guy. He's down on his luck, and he finds this abandoned house that's inhabited by this drunkard magician fellow. And very early on in the story, this, down on his luck man realizes that this magician has the power to manifest things in his mind to appear. And he sees dollar signs out of this and wants to extort and pretty much manipulate this magician to do what he wants. And he tries to get him to make him money and all this other stuff, but it never comes out right. And the guy assumes that this stuff isn't coming out right because the guy's a drunk. So he pretty much tries to get him to stop drinking. And when that happens, he mentions that the alcohol's his medicine. And if he doesn't drink it, the demons come. And let's just say there's a certain being inside of this old television that comes to life and wreaks havoc, and the two find themselves dealing with that, and then you get the climax twist and what's going to become of the drunkard man and the guy down on his luck, let's just say. Yeah, this one, like I said, it just didn't do enough with the concept to wow me with it, but I thought this was a really good episode, and no one ever talks about this episode in regards to this show, and yeah, I think it's kind of underrated. So there you go. Now at number 10, we have episode 65 called Leavings. It's written by Gahan Wilson, and I also give this a 3.5 out of 5 stars as well. This one has a younger Tony Shalhoub from Monk in it, and this story's kind of weird as well. That's the running gag of Monsters. It's about these two police officers who are out doing detective work on a case one day, and they stumble across this man down in the subways that has no arms and like no skin color, and it's just super bizarre. And they take the man to the police station, and they're trying to get the police chief to look at the guy and hear their story. And the police chief's like, okay, well, we'll take him to the doctor or whatever, blah, 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 blah. But very early on, or maybe I should say after that point, the police chief tries to cue these gentlemen in about this phenomenon about people turning up without, limbs and what have you. And this perhaps has to deal with maybe an underlying experiment that these cops don't know about. And the police chief has a revelation for them, let's just say, involving an officer that comes later on. And it's kind of a sucky conclusion for these cops, I should say. But yeah, this one was really bizarre. But there are some imagery here that made me think a little bit. That got to me, the guy with missing arms, and they end up in like a room in the police headquarters that is really bizarre and kind of creeped me out. But other than that, not a lot to this one, but it's a good one. It's entertaining, good acting, and some memorable moments, especially in the climax. So take that for what you will. Now, my number 9 is another later in the season episode here. We have episode 70, Hostile Takeover. This one was written by Jonathan Valin, and I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars as well. So yeah, Hostile Takeover. Been there, done that with the concept, but this one rarely does work, especially for this show. It's about a gentleman who is basically walking all over small business owners and essentially acquiring them to collect them in like a stock portfolio. And it's revealed in the story that he's been working with this voodoo priestess who's played by the lovely Pam Grier. And there's this ritual that he's been doing for the past year that has been allowing him to get rich. But the priestess says, all right, well, you've been doing this for a while, and you haven't made your sacrifice that you need to make to appease the voodoo god. And the sacrifice essentially requires pieces of himself to appease it. And if he doesn't give up the piece, what's going to happen is they're going to start collecting pieces of his body. And what I mean by them, I mean demons sent by the devil himself. So the man decides to do something, I guess, awful to this priestess woman when he thinks that she's possibly a zombie. And once this event happens, he feels like he's possibly been hexed or cursed in his place of business. And while he's kind of spiraling, he ends up talking with this janitor that works there. And he's possibly looking at the janitor as maybe like a get out of jail free card from the voodoo priest. But there's a plot twist involving that. And yeah, this one I felt like needed a lot more to it to make it pop. This could have been a Tales from the Crypt episode, I feel, but there's already so many other things like it. I don't think that this one would have done anything new, minus maybe this idea of borrowing body parts as payment. But yeah, solid idea. Just didn't really stick where I wanted it to, so that's why I put it here. Now we got 4 more good left, and this is the part of the list where these are like ones I would go out of my way to rewatch if I had to pick. So at number 8, we have episode 58, The Waiting Game. This was a story by John Fox, and I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I understand that this is a very popular Monsters episode, and I really liked it. You have these 2 military gentlemen. They're out in a bunker, and they're tasked with sending off nukes to essentially cause a nuclear holocaust. And one guy does not want to push the button, but the other guy wants to follow orders. And the 2 gentlemen ultimately do shoot the nukes off, and they understand now that they're going to be stuck where they are together for a long time. And once they've been in the bunker by themselves for a while, living off rations and only communicating with each other and maybe some other bunkers out there with people inside, one gentleman learns that people are trying to leave the bunker because they think they hear voices outside and there could be life still out there. So this sparks the communication between one specific woman and said gentleman, and he gets the bright idea that he wants to leave because the guy that he's stuck with is a control freak, and he's kind of killing the vibe. So it comes to a point where it's essentially like, you can either kill me or I'm going to leave on my own and I'm not going to stay here. And the guy's like, all right, well, you're good as dead anyway out there, so see you later. But the guy starts to hear the phenomenon that his friend was urging that was actually happening, and as real as the outside people were making it out to be. And he learns it the hard way near the end, where he's like, okay, well, maybe I can leave. But there's a massive plot twist about what's actually going on in the outside world, and it's not what you think. So, yeah, this one I thought was, it had a lot of potential. You have this nuclear holocaust aspect to it. You have these 2, very different egos battling their wits inside of this military bunker. It just doesn't do much interesting ideas with it. You know what I mean? Maybe the twist being memorable kind of helps it, but I don't know. This one did have some good acting performances, and yeah, just the guy wanting to leave the bunker and trying to face the unknown on the outside. It kind of reminds me of, like, if you're put in the situation, I guess a lot of people would probably bring up this question, or if you're good as dead, why not take the chance to live a little? So yeah, I like the message of that the episode offers, so take that for what you will. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that one. At number 7, we have episode 63, The Space Eaters. This is another very popular episode from the show. This was written by Frank Belknap Long. I think that's how you say it. I also gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. This one was cool. I like this one. You have a doctor and another guy that he's friends with. They're in this town, like, I guess small town, but there's been some extraterrestrial phenomenon going on, and this one gentleman comes inside of their domicile, and he's, pleading that something has happened to him, and the gentleman finds a hole in the side of his head and looks inside and sees that his brain has been sucked out of his skull. And they start to realize very quickly that something is off, and yeah, I'll just leave it there. There's some aliens afoot. Yeah, this one was wild. You have this plot twist that happens near the end that you see coming from a mile away, especially when you get towards the climax portion when the gentlemen feel like they have to deal with this alien, which I think is one of the coolest monsters in Monsters. If I had to say, like, the giant eyeball, super iconic. Everybody knows what it is in the show. He's cool. But other than that, this one just doesn't do much horror for me. I'm not too much into sci-fi like that. But if that's your speed, this episode could be for you. But I thought, it was good enough. All right, now we're entering the top 6 here. At number 6, we have episode 67, A Face for Radio. This was written by Bruce Fairstein, and I gave this a 3.75 out of 5 stars. This one stars Morton Downey Jr., who was in one of my favorite Tales from the Crypt episodes, and he plays the sexist asshole very well, and that's essentially all his character is in this story. It's about a radio host who hosts like a 2 or 3 a.m. Paranormal talk show, and he just tells people off that have these supernatural experiences that they're basically fucking stupid and they're faking shit or what have you. Or maybe they're just mentally ill. Well, there's this woman that comes in and she looks attractive to this man, and of course he's interested to hear what she has to say and wants to interview her. But she claims that she has an interaction with this alien species, and she was taken up into a flying saucer, and they did something to her body, and now she has this evidence to prove that they exist. And her conspiracy is that they use these terrible bodies that they have, and they swap the sentience with human bodies. And she shows the alien creature, and the alien creature is talking like telepathically, but out loud, right? And Morton Downey Jr. is like kind of mortified, but he's just trying to get into this girl's pants, so he's like buying into the story, but he's not really listening to her. And that ends up kind of biting him in the ass by the end, because what she's saying possibly is the truth. And it goes to show you that you should listen to people instead of just using them as an object of affection or what have you. But, this one was entertaining. It was just flat out entertaining. Great performances all around. For a mild bottle episode, this one had a little more going for it. In my opinion, I think I like this better than the bottle episode with Jerry Stiller from Tales from the Dark Side that involved a talk show radio host. I think this one is more fun, in my opinion. But yeah, other than that, nothing too special, but yeah, something revisitable. And to round out the good, we have episode 68, Werewolf of Hollywood. And this was written by Ron Goulart, and I also gave this a 3.75 out of 5 stars. This one is kind of like a noir spoof about I think he's like a film writer or something, and he works at this studio, and essentially there's this director in town that's supposedly associated with this werewolf phenomenon going on in Hollywood. And before I get into any specifics that will completely spoil what's going to happen in the story, I'll just say this. There's essentially a ruse going on to get this writer and this director nearby each other, because there's some animosity and bad blood possibly brewing between maybe some stuff that they've been involved with, or certain people they've been involved with, I would say. And I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, this one to me, it had great acting performances. It executed the noir feel very well. It was corny, but a fun kind of corny. It had a cutesy, goosebumpsy for adults type twist going on. But I love the love letters to Creepshow. And if you look really hard in the episode, you'll see Adrienne Barbeau's still image from the crate from the original Creepshow movie. You'll see a Creepshow poster in the background. I think there's a head bust of the witch from Trick or Treat's pilot episode from Tales from the Dark Side in there. And I think there is a VHS that's labeled Lot 249 somewhere in this movie studio that I saw, or like a film canister or something that I thought was cool. So as a Creepshow fan, as a fan of, I guess, Laurel production stuff, this tickled my heartstrings. But yeah, it was a good episode. Not the best thing ever, but I'd come back for it. Now, my top 4 from here on out, these are ones that I thought were exceptional for this show standards. And we got 3 very good to go over, and then the one token great episode, in my opinion. So, at number 4 overall, we have episode 64, The Waiting Room. This was written by Neil Stevens, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This one is kind of like the movie Lights Out, but this came out way before it. So I think Lights Out ripped this story off. But this story is about this gentleman who has taken, I guess, his son and his girlfriend to this hotel that he hasn't been to in a long time. And the hotel supposedly is the same hotel where him and his wife, once had their honeymoon years ago. And the husband seems kind of bittersweet to be back there, but he's off in his own room, and the couple, they have their own room, or I should say the dad has his own room. Well, it turns out, as we learn in the story, that there's a phenomenon going on that these rooms in the hotel are associated with the light switch, right? And if you turn off the light switch in one room and you go out to the hallway, you're perhaps transported to a parallel dimension. And we learn this with the dad character in the story, that on his honeymoon night, he got lost in the hotel in the dark, and he ended up in this room and was seduced by this woman in the room. And the woman's like, "You're going to come back for me if I let you go, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I will," right? And he tried to come back, and yeah, he couldn't muster up the courage to face her. Well, it turns out that the male character, I guess the son of the dad, he ends up going missing. And when the girl hears this, she realizes that she possibly has to go brave whatever this creature is or person is that's possibly lurking in the dark when they have to venture out in there. And yeah, I'll just leave it there. It's a very weird story, but trust me, you have to sit down and watch it. John Saxon from A Nightmare on Elm Street plays the dad in this episode, and it's kind of creepy, I'm not gonna lie. Very Tales from the Crypt-esque. It almost feels like a long lost Night Rose episode. It might be one of those unmade ones that they had planned for that. There is some softcore porn elements that they possibly could have cut out. But if this was a Night Rose, that would have been full frontal. But anyways, yeah, Waiting Room, solid episode. Super solid one. But not as solid as my top three. And at number 3, we have episode 72, The Moving Finger. This was written by Stephen King. And I gave this a 4.25 out of 5 stars. This one stars Tom Noonan, who wrote that episode I mentioned earlier. He's a really tall fellow. This story is just fucking awesome, okay? You have this guy who is not all right in the head, but, he seems to have, a normal mundane life with his wife. Until he starts to hear this persistent noise coming from the bathroom. And when he ventures into the bathroom, he notices that there's a finger looming up from the faucet. And he can't believe his eyes at first, but then he spends the rest of the story trying to convince himself that this finger is actually real. And nobody's going to believe him because this phenomenon sounds crazy. So he's going to have to take it into his own hands and handle it. And let's just say we see this man kind of fall apart psychotically as he's handling this finger. And there's some pretty cool moments involving harming the finger. And let's just say there's a saw or I don't know, kind of like a chainsaw, but not really, going on, where he takes it into the bathroom to take care of the finger. And there's a plot twist near the end with the police officer coming to investigate some noise complaints from the neighbors and stuff. And yeah. I don't know. It's just a very weird, bizarre story. Might be some mild subtext about mental health going on there, but I'll mention that in the top 10 favorite Monsters episode video, because this will be on there. So, yeah, this one, really enjoyed myself with it. And right next to it, basically, at number 2, my second favorite episode from this season was episode 51, Bug House. This was a story written by Lisa Tuttle, and I gave this a 4.25 out of 5 stars as well. Bug House has to be the most played straight to be scary episodes in this entire show. This one, what holds it back, in my opinion, kind of like The Moving Finger, is there's not a lot to it, and for this one specifically, it's kind of messy in terms of narrative structure, but it's about this woman who has this, existing rivalry with her sister, who she's kind of estranged from, but she's reluctantly staying at her sister's house, where she is, living with her now boyfriend. And the reason why is because she's having car trouble and all that, and she doesn't necessarily want to be there, but while she's there, she figures that, she'll get to, spend some time with her. But she learns that her sister is pregnant with this guy, so she's like, oh, maybe I should get to know this gentleman. And she notices that the guy is very weird and kind of quiet, but he also has this mystique-ness to him. And as the story goes along, she finds herself being swooned and seduced by this man herself and starts to have an affair with the guy. And it quickly turns into her possibly thinking about her sister getting, eradicated out of the situation. And before anything can happen, she realizes the error of her judgment because something is not right with this boyfriend. And I'll just leave it at that. And there might be some subtext to peel back. I'll go into more depth in my top 10 video because this one will be in there about what this episode is saying. But all I'll say for now is this one has some of the best body horror effects I have seen in Monsters. And one scene in particular legit almost made me throw up. So take that for what you will. Now, the only thing is, like I can outright complain about is the ending. I really don't know what they're trying to go for there, but I kind of do. But other than that, this one was a very creepy one. And I like that Monsters took a straightforward approach with this one. But my number one episode from season 3 has to be the only great episode I think that came out of this season wholesale, in my opinion. This one is a clear great one. This is episode 54, The Hole. This was written by Jerry Conway and Wayne Bestwick, and I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. This story is a commentary about the pointless bloodshed of the Vietnam War and the perspective of the Vietnamese, more specifically the South Vietnamese and the American soldiers out there fighting the Vietnam War. And it's basically about this South Vietnamese soldier, I think a black soldier and a white soldier, and the black and white soldiers are from the U.S. Army. They have infiltrated a hole, which is basically just a bunker underground for the Vietnamese enemies. And they've taken refuge there to avoid, bombardment above on the soil. But while they're down there, they notice nobody's around. And there's only one person in there, but they're almost dying. And they're dying from horrific injuries and body lacerations. And they're like, what the hell happened to this guy? And the South Vietnamese guy who's translating it hears the story, and they're like, there's people coming out of the walls. The dead have come to speak their minds about this war. And the American soldiers are like, holy fuck, man, we're stuck down here. We can't go up there because there's napalm, blah, blah, blah. We can only stay down here, and now we got corpses coming out of the wall, right? So they're trying to figure out possibly a way to get out before what happened to the Vietnamese soldiers happens to them. And as we learn the story, and as they communicate with each other, that might not be the case. Shit kind of hits the fan. And yeah, and at the end of it, I think it has a poignant message, and I'll go into this in my top 10 video as well of what I think about this episode in specifics. But I think the ending kind of feeds into the message about the pointless bloodshed and the pointless deaths that happened and how preventable this all could have been at the end of the day. And yeah, it's not quite perfect. It has some sort of boring parts going for it inside the tunnel, but other than that, this was a great episode nonetheless. So yeah, that's my Season 3 of Monsters ranking for you. Thank you for sitting through this long video. There's a lot to go over, but yeah. Can't wait to make my top 10 favorite episodes now after this. But let me know down in the comment section beforehand, what are your favorite Season 3 episodes from this show? Do you like my list? Do you not like it? What do you agree with? What do you not agree with? How would you rank them from worst to best in your own opinion? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.